The dying stars of the Veltharian Empire cast their last light across a fleet of broken ships drifting through the cold darkness of space. Ambassador Kylith pressed her translucent hand against the viewing port of the refugee vessel Saros, and watching as another ship and their convoy went dark forever. The crystalline structure of her face reflected the dim emergency lighting that barely kept their own vessel functioning. 8 million souls. That was all that remained of a civilization that once ruled 19 star systems with wisdom and grace. The nanoplague had started small, eating away at their technology like invisible termites. First the communication arrays failed, then the life support systems. Then the very foundations of their crystal cities began to crumble into dust. No Veltharian scientists could stop it, no ancient remedy could slow it down. It consumed everything. They had built over 10,000 years of peaceful expansion. Captain Jin-Ho approached her with heavy steps, his own crystalline features dim with exhaustion. His uniform, once bright with the proud colors of the Imperial fleet, now hung loose on his weakening frame. Ambassador, we have lost 3 more ships in the past hour. The Dawn's Promise, Starsinger, and Hope's Light have all gone silent. Their life support systems finally gave way to the plague. Kylith closed her eyes and felt the weight of those lost lives. Families, children, elders, who had survived the first waves of the plague, only to die alone in the cold vacuum of space. How many does that leave us? 47 ships still functional, but barely. Our engineers estimate we have perhaps 2 weeks before critical systems start failing across the entire fleet. Jin-Ho paused, then added quietly, the medical bays. Report that our people are beginning to show signs of the plague affecting their biological systems as well. It is no longer just consuming our technology. Through the viewport, Kylith could see the blue and green world that had become their destination of last resort. Earth, a primitive planet inhabited by a young species called humans who had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Their ships were crude compared to Veltharian vessels. Their cities built of metal and stone rather than living crystal. Their technology powered by burning fossil fuels and splitting atoms. Yet something about these humans intrigued the Veltharian scientists who had been studying intercepted human communications. The humans showed a remarkable ability to adapt to new diseases, to create treatments for conditions that would kill other species. Their medical databases, though primitive by Veltharian standards, contained innovative approaches that their own doctors had never considered. Have our long-range sensors detected any human ships? Kylith asked. Jin-Ho nodded toward the tactical display. Several patrol vessels are maintaining distance at the edge of their solar system. They know we are here, but they have not approached or communicated. Our analysts believe they are studying us, trying to determine if we pose a threat. The irony was not lost on Kylith. The mighty Veltharian Empire, once feared and respected across the galaxy, now reduced to begging for help from a species they would have barely noticed a century ago. But pride was a luxury they could no longer afford. Every hour of delay meant more deaths, more ships going dark, more families torn apart by the relentless advance of the plague. Prepare a formal transmission to the human authorities, she commanded. Full diplomatic protocol. Offer them access to our star charts, our energy matrix technology, our quantum field generators, anything they want. Make it clear that we come, not as conquerors, but as refugees seeking aid. Ambassador, the Council of Elders specifically instructed us never to share our advanced technologies with primitive species. The risk of the Council of Elders is dead, Kylith said sharply, then softened her tone. Along with their homeworld and everything they swore to protect, we cannot cling to old laws when our entire species faces extinction. As the communications officer began preparing the transmission, Kylith returned to watching the Earth through the viewport. She had studied human behavior patterns from their intercepted broadcasts, trying to understand these strange beings who seemed capable of both incredible compassion and terrible violence. They had stories of helping refugees, of sending aid to disaster zones, of sacrificing their own lives to save strangers. But they also had stories of wars, of entire cities destroyed over minor disagreements, of treating outsiders with suspicion. and fear. Which version of humanity would they encounter? The helpers or the destroyers? The transmission beam lanced out across space, carrying with it the desperate hopes of 8 million dying Veltharians. In the message, Kyleth had included historical records of their peaceful civilization, medical data about the plague that was killing them, and detailed offers of technological exchange. She had tried to make it clear that they wanted nothing more than a chance to save their people and perhaps find a new home among the stars, as the beam reached Earth and disappeared into the planet's communication networks. Kyleth whispered an ancient Veltharian prayer for wisdom and mercy. The words echoed in the empty bridge as her officers waited for a response that would determine the fate of their entire species. She had no way of knowing that her desperate plea for salvation would instead awaken something dark and ruthless. In the human spirit, something that would turn their hope into the beginning of their final nightmare. The war room deep inside, Earth's orbital defense platform buzzed with quiet activity as Admiral Minseok studied the large holographic display. Showing the alien fleet, 47 ships hung in space like dying stars at the very edge of their solar system. Far enough away to pose no immediate threat, but close enough to be monitored constantly. The ships looked strange to human eyes, made of what appeared to be living crystal that pulsed with weak light. Colonel Yuna stood beside the tactical table, pointing at the readouts with a metal stylus. Her uniform was crisp and professional, but her eyes held the sharp look of a predator studying wounded prey. "Admiral, our sensors showed that their power levels continued to drop every hour. 3 more ships went completely dark during the night shift. Whatever is killing their technology is working faster than they can repair it." Admiral Minseok nodded thoughtfully, his weathered face showing no emotion as he absorbed the information. He had spent 30 years defending Earth from potential threats, and experience had taught him to trust actions rather than words. The aliens claimed to be peaceful refugees, but history was full of Trojan horses and false promises. Defense Minister Tajin entered the room with quick steps, his expensive suit a sharp contrast to the military uniforms around him. He was a political man, but one who understood the value of military strength. "Admiral, I have been reviewing the alien transmission with our linguistics team. Their offer of technology is quite generous, perhaps too generous." "How so, Minister?" Minseok asked. "Desperate people make desperate offers," Tejin replied, moving to stand beside the holographic display. "They are offering us star charts that would advance our space exploration by centuries, energy technology that could solve our power problems forever, and quantum field generators that our scientists can barely understand. The question is, why they would give up such advantages to a primitive species like ourselves." Colonel Yuna pulled up another screen, showing detailed scans of the alien vessels. "Unless they are not as advanced as they want us to believe." "Oh, look at these readings, Minister. Their ships are failing, their technology is dying, and their numbers are dropping every day. This could be the perfect opportunity to acquire alien technology without having to face them at full strength." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Through the large windows, Earth hung below them like a blue and white jewel, peaceful and beautiful. But the people in this room were tasked with protecting that beauty from any threat, no matter how desperate or pitiful it might appear. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" Minseok asked. A younger officer, Captain Sujin, stepped forward with a data tablet. "Their weapon systems appear to be offline on most ships, probably due to whatever plague is affecting their technology. The ships that still have power are focusing everything on life support and basic navigation. We estimate that in their current condition, a single Earth destroyer could take out their entire fleet." Defense Minister Tijen smiled coldly. "Then we hold all the cards in this negotiation. We can dictate our own terms." Admiral Minseok turned back to the display, watching as another alien ship flickered and went dark. Somewhere in that failing vessel, families were probably dying in the cold darkness of space. But his job was not to feel sympathy for potential enemies. His job was to protect humanity. "Prepare our response," he commanded. "Standard quarantine protocols? They will remain at the edge of our system while we evaluate their request. We want complete technological schematics for every system on their ships, biological samples from every alien aboard their vessels, and full submission to our inspection teams. Make it clear that any attempt to enter our inner system without permission will be treated as an act of war." Captain Sujin hesitated. "Sir, those demands are quite harsh for refugees seeking aid. Refugees do not possess technology that could threaten our entire civilization," Minseok replied firmly. "We cannot afford to take their claims of peaceful intentions at face value. If they truly need our help, they will accept our terms." Hours later, aboard the refugee ship Sorrow's End, Ambassador Kyleth read the human response with growing despair. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. The humans saw them not as fellow beings in need of help, but as specimens, to be studied and dissected. Science Keeper Binwall, one of the few remaining Veltharian scholars, leaned over Kyleth's shoulder to read the transmission. Her crystalline features had grown dim with exhaustion and desperation. "They want biological samples from every person on our ships. They want our complete technological databases. They want us to submit to indefinite quarantine while their scientists study us like laboratory animals. They do not see us as refugees," Kyleth whispered, her voice hollow with realization. "They see us as an opportunity. Our weakness is their advantage." Through the viewport, more human ships appeared on the horizon, sleek and predatory as they moved to establish a blockade. Around the Veltharian fleet, the humans were taking no chances, treating the dying aliens as potential threats rather than victims of tragedy as Earth's forces began. Intercepting and boarding Veltharian vessels for mandatory inspections, Kyleth felt a cold fear settle. In her chest, she had heard stories about human ruthlessness, about their ability to justify any action in the name of security. Now she was beginning to understand that those stories might not have been exaggerated after all. The humans had made their position clear. The Veltharians would submit completely, or receive no help at all. 3 months had passed since the Veltharian fleet first arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. The situation had grown desperate beyond all measure. Ambassador Kyleth stood in the medical bay of the Sorrow's End, watching as another child took her final breath. The crystalline being's light faded to nothing as her parents wept silently beside the small body. This was the 4th death today, and it was still morning. The human quarantine had been merciless in its efficiency. Every day brought new demands, new inspections, new delays. The humans took samples of Veltharian technology and biology, promising to study their condition, but no help ever came. Meanwhile, the plague continued its relentless work, consuming both their ships and their people with equal hunger. Science Keeper Binwall approached, Kyleth with trembling hands clutching a datapad. Her once bright crystalline features had grown so dim that she looked like a dying ember. "Ambassador, we have intercepted human communications from their medical facility on Luna. They have developed treatments that could save us, but they refuse to share them. They want to study how we die before they decide if we deserve to live." Kyleth felt something break inside her chest. For 3 months, she had clung to hope that human compassion would eventually overcome human suspicion. She had believed that no intelligent species could watch millions die when they possessed the power to help. She had been wrong. "How many ships do we have left that can still function?" she asked quietly. 19 vessels with enough power for basic operations. The rest are running on emergency life support only. We estimate another week before total system failure across the fleet. Kyleth closed her eyes and made the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her short life. Prepare Operation Silent Dawn. If the humans will not give us what we need to survive, then we must take it. Strike Leader Hyjin was one of the few Veltharian warriors who still possessed the strength to fight. Her military training had prepared her for many things, but not for leading a desperate mission to steal medical supplies from the very people they had come to for help. She gathered 4 other Veltharians who still had enough energy for the mission, knowing that this would likely be their final service to their dying people. The plan was simple in its desperation. Using the last of their stealth technology, they would infiltrate the human medical research facility on Luna Steel, the genetic therapy research that could save their species and return before the humans even knew they were gone. The facility's quantum barriers were strong, A Veltharian phase technology could slip through them like water through a net. What Hyjin and her team did not know was that Human Security Chief Dongwu had been monitoring their communications. For weeks, every desperate conversation, every planning session, every detail of their mission had been intercepted and analyzed. The humans were not just prepared for the Veltharian infiltration attempt, they had designed it to fail in the most spectacular way possible. As Hyjin and her team materialized inside the research facility, they found themselves in a brightly lit room, surrounded by armed human guards and automated defense systems. The medical equipment they had come to steal was nowhere to be seen. Instead, they faced the cold eyes of Security Chief Dongwu, who stood behind a protective barrier with his arms crossed. "Did you really think we would not see this coming?" Dongwu asked, with a smile that held no warmth. "Did you believe that? Your primitive encryption could hide your plans from us? We have been listening to every word you spoke for months." Hyjin realized with growing horror that they had walked into a carefully prepared trap. The humans had not just anticipated their desperate gambit. They had encouraged it, allowed it to proceed so they could justify what came next. "We only want to save our people," Hyjin said, her voice breaking with desperation. "Please, we are not your enemies." "You became our enemies the moment you decided to steal from us," Dongwu replied coldly. Then he gave the order that would change everything. Open fire. The firefight lasted 17 minutes, but it felt like hours to the dying Veltharians. Human weapons were crude but effective, designed to kill rather than disable. The automated defense systems tracked every movement with mechanical precision. While the guards showed no mercy for the desperate aliens, when the shooting finally stopped, the floor was covered with both human and Veltharian blood. 3 human researchers lay dead, killed by desperate aliens who had nothing left to lose. 4 Veltharians had died beside them, her crystalline bodies shattered like broken glass. Only Hyjin remained alive, her chest torn open by human bullets, her light fading rapidly. With her final breath, she managed to activate her communication device and send one last message to the fleet. "Forgive us. We have doomed us all." Within hours, Earth's media networks exploded with footage of the attack. The images were carefully edited to show human victims and Veltharian weapons. With no context about the months of refused aid or the dying children aboard the refugee ships, the narrative was simple and effective. The aliens had come not as refugees seeking help, but as invaders planning to steal human technology. The story spread across Earth like wildfire, turning public opinion completely against the Veltharians. What had begun as a desperate attempt to save their people had become proof of their evil intentions. The trap had worked perfectly, giving humanity exactly the justification it needed for what would come next. The Great Hall of the United Earth. Council had never felt more heavy with the weight of decision as Admiral Minseok stood at the center of the circular chamber. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in tiered rows around him, their faces grave as they listened to his words. The holographic displays showed images from the Luna facility attack. Carefully edited footage of human blood on sterile floors and Veltharian weapons among the medical equipment. "Members of the council," Minseok began, his voice carrying clearly. "Through the silent chamber, we face a threat unlike any in human history. For 3 months, we extended our hand in friendship to these aliens. We offered them sanctuary, medical aid, and the protection of our laws. How did they repay our kindness? The theft, violence, and the murder of innocent researchers." Council President Saw Young, an elderly woman with silver hair and tired eyes, leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, these beings came to us as refugees. Their ships are failing, their people are dying. Could this attack not have been born of desperation rather than malice?" Minseok turned to face her directly, his expression hard as steel. "Madam President, desperation does not excuse terrorism. When faced with our legitimate security requirements, they chose deception and violence. They infiltrated our most secure facility, killed our people, and attempted to steal technology that could have been used against us. Is this the behavior of peaceful refugees?" Defense Minister Taejin stood from his seat in the observer section. "The Admiral speaks truth. Intelligence services have been monitoring their communications. They speak of humans as primitives, as a species beneath their notice. They came here not seeking partnership, but looking for weakness to exploit. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs as representatives discussed the implications among themselves. Admiral Minciok waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing his presentation. He activated another holographic display showing the Veltharian fleet hanging at the edge of their solar system. "Look at their formation," he said, pointing to the tactical readout. Even in their weakened state, they maintain military spacing. Their ships may be failing, but they are still arranged for combat operations. This is not the behavior of helpless refugees. This is the behavior of an invasion force, waiting for the right moment to strike. Representative Chen from the Asian Federation raised his hand. "Admiral, surely their deteriorating condition makes them less of a threat, not more. Why not simply maintain the quarantine until their plague finishes what it started?" Minciok's eyes flashed with something cold and dangerous. "Because, Representative Chen, we cannot be certain that their plague will not spread to our systems. We cannot be certain that they do not have reinforcements coming. We cannot be certain of anything except that they have already proven themselves willing to kill humans to get what they want." The Admiral walked slowly around the center of the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. "Members of the Council, I am not asking you to authorize an attack on refugees. I am asking you to authorize the defense of humanity against a species that has revealed its true nature through its actions. They have killed our people. They have threatened our security. They possess technology we do not understand and intentions we cannot trust." Council President Saw Young looked around the chamber at the faces of her fellow representatives. Fear was written clearly on most of them, fear mixed with anger at the images of the dead researchers. "Admiral, you are requesting authorization for what amounts to genocide. These beings may number in the millions." "I am requesting authorization to eliminate a threat to human survival," Minciok replied without hesitation. "If we allow them to live, if we allow them to spread word of our location and capabilities to other alien species, we will face invasions that will make this current situation look like a minor border dispute. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Madam President. It is filled with species that will see our compassion as weakness and our mercy as an invitation to conquest." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The images of dead humans, the fear of alien technology, and the carefully crafted narrative of Veltharian deception had done their work. When the final vote was called, it was unanimous. Every representative, even those who had initially opposed military action, raised their hand in favor of Operation Cleansing Dawn at 0347 hours Earth Standard Time, the sleeping giant of humanity. Fully awakened, human battle fleets, sleek and deadly as sharks, emerged from hyperspace around the Veltharian refugee convoy. The ships bore names like Retribution, Justice, and Human Pride. And they carried weapons designed not just to kill, but to terrify. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a systematic execution carried out with clinical precision and calculated cruelty. The humans had spent months studying every aspect of Veltharian technology, psychology, and tactics. They knew exactly how to cause maximum psychological damage. Before delivering the killing blow, the first phase was psychological warfare. Human ships broadcast captured recordings of Veltharian children dying from the plague, their voices twisted and amplified into screams of agony that filled every communication frequency. The sound drove many adult Veltharians mad with grief and horror. Exactly as the human tactical planners had intended. Then came the kinetic strikes, precisely targeted, to breach holes without destroying data cores. The humans wanted the Veltharian ships to die slowly, their people suffocating in the cold vacuum of space, while human crews recorded everything for later study. Ambassador Kyleth stood on the bridge of the Sorrow's End, watching in absolute horror as her people's ships cracked and shattered like crystal ornaments dropped on stone floors. This was not war as the Veltharians understood it. This was extermination carried out with the efficiency of a machine and the cruelty of a nightmare. The small escape pod drifted silently through the cold darkness of space. Its single occupant barely alive after 6 months of running from death. itself. Ambassador Keyleth floated in the cramped interior, her crystalline body so dim that she looked like a dying candle flame in the eternal night. The pod's life support systems wheezed and clicked as they struggled to keep her alive. Powered by the last failing energy cells salvaged from her destroyed ship, she was alone now, the final surviving member of what had once been a proud diplomatic mission. The Sorrow's End was gone, along with every other ship in the refugee fleet. Every friend she had known, every colleague she had worked with, every child she had watched grow up aboard the convoy ships, all of them were dead, killed by the humans they had foolishly trusted. Her communicator crackled with static as it intercepted another transmission from the human fleet that had been hunting her people across the galaxy. The device was old and barely functional, but it still managed to pick up the cold, efficient voices of Earth's military commanders as they reported their progress in what they called the Veltharian Extermination Campaign. Strike Force. Delta. To command, came the voice of Captain Jihoon from somewhere in the Rigel system. Colony World Beta 7 has been sterilized. No survivors detected. All population centers have been reduced to glass. Proceeding to next target coordinates. Keyleth felt something die inside her chest as she listened to the report. Beta 7 had been a beautiful world where her people grew, the crystal gardens that fed their souls as much as their bodies. Thousands of Veltharian families had lived there in peaceful harmony, tending their gardens and raising their children under alien suns. Now it was nothing but melted glass and radioactive dust. The humans had not been content with destroying the refugee fleet. Once they had tasted Veltharian blood, they had developed an appetite for more. They had followed the trail of her people back through space like hunting dogs following a scent, systematically tracking down every colony, every research station, every hidden outpost where Veltharians might have taken shelter. Command to Strike Force Omega, came another voice. This one belonging to Admiral Park from the direction of the Vega system. Intelligence confirms the location of Veltharian research. Station Gamma 9, deploy quantum torpedoes for maximum area effect. We want no chance of survivors. The methodical nature of the extermination was what horrified Keyleth the most. The humans were not driven by rage or passion in their killing. They approached the destruction of her entire species with the same cold efficiency they might use. To debug a computer program, every attack was planned, every target was analyzed. Every death was calculated for maximum effect. Her communicator suddenly filled with a familiar voice that made her crystalline heart freeze with terror. General Hay-1, the human commander who had personally overseen the destruction of the refugee fleet, was reporting from somewhere deep in Veltharian space. Sector 77 cleared. His voice echoed across the communication channels with matter-of-fact precision. All defensive installations destroyed. No survivors detected. All data cores have been secured for analysis. Proceeding to target designation Veltharian Prime. Veltharian Prime. Her homeworld, the ancient planet where her species had first learned to sing to the crystals and build cities that lived and breathed like living things. The world where billions of her people still lay dying from the plague, too weak to defend themselves, too sick to even understand what was coming for them. Keyleth activated her pod's long-range sensors and managed to get a weak signal from the direction of her home system, which he saw through the static and interference made her wish he had died with the rest of her people months ago. Human battle. Fleets surrounded Veltharian Prime like a pack of metal wolves circling a wounded deer. Hundreds of ships filled the space around her homeworld, their weapons trained on a planet that had no defenses left to offer. The plague had consumed their orbital platforms, their planetary shields, their communication networks. Her people were as helpless as newborn infants against the human war machine. The attack began with surgical precision. Human ships targeted. The few remaining power generators that kept the underground cities alive. Then they hit the medical facilities, where desperate doctors were still trying to find a cure for the plague. Finally, they began the systematic bombardment of every population center on the planet. Keyleth listened in numb horror as the reports flooded in. City of Crystal Harmonies destroyed. No survivors. The great library of Velthor has been reduced to ash. All population centers in the northern continent had been sterilized. Each report was another nail in the coffin of her entire species. The humans were not just killing her people. They were erasing every trace that the Veltharian civilization had ever existed. They destroyed art galleries and schools, hospitals and homes, monuments and museums. Nothing was spared, nothing was preserved, as the final transmission came from Veltharian Prime. A week. Desperate cry for mercy that went unanswered. Kyleth activated the recording device in her escape pod. If she was going to die alone in the darkness of space, she would at least leave behind a warning for any other species that might encounter humanity in the future. This is Ambassador Kyleth of the Veltharian Empire, last survivor of my people. She spoke into the recorder, her voice barely above a whisper. We came to the humans as beggars, seeking salvation from death. We offered them friendship, knowledge, and peaceful cooperation. We learned too late that humans are death itself, wearing the mask of civilization. Her pod's life support systems gave a final wheeze and went silent. In the growing cold, Kyleth closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for forgiveness. Not for her people, but for the galaxy itself. By seeking help from humanity, the Veltharians had awakened something terrible and shown it the way to the stars.